If you look for it, every day has cause for celebration. Celebrate a friend for their promotion, baby, wedding, life thing.
You could celebrate an upcoming spring holiday. Heck, celebrate your favorite Netflix show having a new season to binge.
Or celebrate keeping the couch warm, which is no easy feat, especially if it's a big couch.
Whatever your celebration, celebrate it with beer, wine, and spirits delivered to your door from Drizzly in under 60 minutes. You can do it without leaving that couch.
Drizzly is the #1 app for alcohol delivery, and for good reason. They offer a huge selection and even allow you to shop for deals across multiple stores.
Right now, Drizzly is giving all new customers $5 off their first order with code FAST5. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com.
That's DRIZLY.com and use promo code FAST5 for $5 off your first order.
This is Murder in the Rain, where each week Emily Rowney, Alicia Holland, and Josh McCullough tell true crime stories of the Pacific Northwest. Murder in the Rain contains graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
From 1978 to 1981, the South Hill Rapist, who disguised himself like a jogger, raped, assaulted, groped, and flashed dozens of women across one posh Spokane, Washington neighborhood. After a car belonging to his father, Gordon, was spotted illegally parked at a junior high running track at the time one of the rapes took place, it was traced back to his son, Frederick Harlan Coe. This connection, along with strong identifications of Coe from many of those attacked, resulted in his arrest for the South Hill rapes. And though it seemed to be an open and shut case, the crimes of Fred Coe would later be brought back to court again and again and again. Fred Coe had a release on bail available to him, but both he and his parents, Gordon and Ruth, lacked the funds to bond him out, so he sat in jail at Spokane Police Headquarters. One evening after work, Jay Williams, a deeply religious man and realtor, though not a terrible one like Fred, and Coe's best friend since childhood, visited him in jail. The visitation room was like the hundreds you've seen in movies and on television, with dingy white tile floors and telephone handsets used to speak between the glass partition booths. Jay sat across the glass from Fred. They picked up the phones and Fred began speaking, claiming his innocence of this or any rape. Jay agreed, but his gut was whispering something different. Then Fred said they couldn't use the phone for the next portion of their visit because the calls were monitored. Fred then unfolded and pressed a note written in all caps against the glass. Quote, "Go to police. Do not refer to me as eccentric. Tell them you and I were trying to catch South Hill Rapist. Say that you were my decoy and I followed you in car." Fred took that note away and showed Jay another. Quote, "You were wearing a dress. Sometimes you were jogging. We used you as a decoy because you're slight in build and could pass as a woman. Tell police you were part of my anti-rape program all along. Tell them you were with me on morning of Feb 5, and I couldn't be the rapist. Do you understand?"
Implying he just took it upon himself to start a rape-stopping
Like
group.
a neighborhood watch of sorts. He's smarter than I thought, I will say. That's actually a plausible storyline from that time frame.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel like.
true. That's true.
It could introduce reasonable doubt, right?
Exactly. If done properly, if the person you're coaching can think on their feet.
Yeah, or is like fully on board with it.
But at the same time, that's a bold move to be writing that down there in prison or jail, rather.
Jay nodded and continued reading. In the note, Fred claimed his arrest was a frame job, and since police and prosecutors were playing dirty, he would respond in kind. Then, Coe asked for a monumental favor. Quote, "I have a dildo and a sweater that have to be disposed of. The police might find them and claim they're the tools of a rapist. Hardly. But the whole thing is innocuous." The note included the address to a vacant house Fred had access to when he was working as the worst realtor in Spokane, and it had been for sale for months. Quote, "Get rid of them for me. I hid the dildo and sweater under the stairwell. Use your lockbox key. Get them." The remainder of the note detailed that Jay should ditch the sweater in a Goodwill drop box and then cut the dildo into 100 pieces and disperse them in vacant lots over time. At the bottom of the note, quote, "You may talk freely to my parents. Do you understand?" Unquote. Jay picked up the phone and said he did. Fred thanked him for coming. That night, Jay, heading home and begging God for guidance, drove past the vacant house Fred said contained the hidden dildo stash and decided to knock on the door when he saw a light on in a window. The woman who answered informed Jay that they had taken it off the market and moved back in a few days previous.
Uh-oh.
Whoops.
A little late.
Jay was stymied by the situation he found himself in. His loyalties to both his best friend and God were at war with one another, and having no next move, he met with Fred's father, Gordon. They spoke in the lobby of Spokane's grandest hotel, the ritzy and historic Davenport. Without getting into detail, he told Gordon that Fred had asked him to destroy some incriminating items. Gordon responded that he wasn't aware of that situation. The end. No further comment from him. Jay said, "Okay, well, tell Fred they're back in the house if you see him before I do." Gordon said, "Will do," and later in the conversation asserted Fred's innocence, citing all the evidence he had seen, but failed to share with Jay. Several nights later, Jay returned to the now occupied home. Walking to the front door, he prayed, quote, "Lord, it's up to you. When I knock on that door, I'm not going to give those people any false reasons. If you intend for the police to have the dildo, then let them have it. Thy will be done." Unquote. He knocked and reminded the homeowner that he was a realtor and had been by a few days ago. He asked if it would be okay for him to look around the house, even though it was no longer for sale. She said, "Come on in, but would it be okay if my husband and I didn't join you because we're watching the TV?" Dumbfounded, Jay thanked them and began looking around.
That is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I can't even imagine. I mean, I guess they had their house on the market.
It's early 80s, so you don't have internet, so you're not, it's not like you're just popping on Zillow and going
you've
to the
been
house.
used to having realtors in and out of your house probably showing it.
But to just have one dude there and be like, "Yeah, we're just going to be downstairs watching TV, though."
I mean, maybe he was familiar enough that they didn't see it
That's wild.
as suspicious, but wow.
No, thank you.
When he knew he was alone, Jay dug around in the storage area under a stairwell. He found the sweater, which was more like a top worn for running, wrapped around a large object. It was Fred's dildo, and it was much larger than Jay expected, the size of a baguette. He had forgotten to bring his briefcase along on the heist, and had nowhere to stow the thing, so he slipped it under his arm, attempting to obscure it with his sport coat. As he reached the front door, the woman of the house popped out and asked him if he got a good look. Jay said yeah, and thanked them for their time. Relieved, but not entirely, Jay took the long way back to his car to shake off anyone possibly following him, and stuffed the dildo under the front seat when he got inside. He knew that cutting the dildo into 100 pieces and disposing of them piecemeal was going to take forever, so before heading home, Jay wrapped the gigantophallus in paper bags and jammed it as far as he could into a full dumpster. In the time before Coe was identified as the South Hill Rapist, Jay and Fred were in a grocery store, probably Rose Hours, standing in line to check out. Jay glanced over at a check-stand newspaper rack featuring South Hill Rapist headlines. He called the rapist despicable and said he would, quote, "end him right then," unquote, if he were the one to catch him in the act. Fred responded that the comments were out of line because Jay was a religious person. Murder was against his beliefs. Jay, taken aback by his friend's reaction, thought, quote, "Wow, that's the most peculiar thing I've ever heard." Reading a list of psychopathic personality disorder traits is like going through a greatest hits of Fred Coe's life. Quote, pleasure-seeking, poor school record, impaired sense of responsibility, can't accept rules and regulations, no sense of remorse, does not learn by mistakes, poor judgment, repeats errors, no insight, poor personal habits, self-discipline lacking, procrastination, stealing, lying, no warmth in personal relations, not able to feel guilt or pure consciousness, blames others, makes excuses, rationalizes, jealous, aloof and cold, unreliable, or manipulative, a poor lifestyle, unquote. Coe, a self-professed model citizen, was eventually charged with 5 additional rapes, to which he pled innocent in March of 1981. After his plea, he was released on bond, $35,000, which his parents had scraped up by selling valuables. Fred Coe, not a lawyer, plotted his own defense, which was rooted in the denial of any wrongdoing ever on any level. The trial began on July 20th, 1981. The jury comprised of Seattleites and presided over by Judge George Shields. The prosecution was led by Donald Brockett. Fred Coe, acting as part of his defense team alongside public defense attorneys Julie Twyford and George Gigler, showed up to court in tailored 3-piece suits, his hair blow-dried to perfection, and makeup on his face. He was going for lawyer chic, but looked more like a college student in his first play. He's vain, is what I'm saying. Both Gordon and Ruth Coe testified on their son's behalf, claiming that during the period the 6 rapes charged had occurred, Fred had eaten breakfast early every morning at their home and then returned in the evening, every evening, for a lengthy dinner. They also claimed that during the time of the rapes, she and Fred had been doing their own vigilante South Hill Rapist stakeouts, and that was why his car had been in close proximity to the site of several rapes. I can visualize the jury box stacked with 12 purse-lipped faces after hearing that. From 1975 to 1976, Fred lived and worked in Las Vegas with his wife Jennifer, her sister, and the sister's young son. The boy, 13 when interviewed, detailed an interminable gauntlet of abuse and sexual assault perpetrated by Fred Coe. Coe would shower with the boy, stretching his penis, forcing soap into his rectum, and saying, "Oh, nothing, dear," when his then wife would ask what was happening in the bathroom after the boy would scream. Coe threatened to send the boy, who was a first grader going into second, to a fishing/torture camp where giant squids would bite off his penis. At a carnival, the boy was forced to ride the most intense rides until he threw up, and another time, Coe forced him to drink beer until he became sick, and then had to remain wearing his own vomit-soaked shirt until bedtime. The boy was bare-bottom spanked with a board and belt up to as many as 50 times, and was hit so frequently with objects that, quote, all the sticks in the closet finally got all broken to pieces, unquote. To further terrorize the boy, Coe, who called the boy a big sissy, would throw him into a 7-foot-deep swimming pool, knowing he was afraid of water. The boy said Jennifer once used a knife to hold Fred at bay, and one night the couple were fighting, and the boy heard Jennifer say, quote, "Walk away, asshole," and then the sound of Fred striking her.
He's even worse than I imagined with the torture. I mean, that definitely pushes him up that gradients of evil scale.
And there's something, too, with the carnival that just feels, I mean, it's all really disgusting to hear and so upsetting. And there's something about that that's extra dark, I guess, because it's supposed to be a fun place and supposed to be a kid place and supposed to be
ruining that for that child.
Literally taking away all of that childhood innocence on like every level
and creating a trigger for him for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's torturous emotionally and physically, which is kind of, I feel like, a little more rare. You know, you think people focus more on one than the other. That just shows how awful he is.
And that was a really easy way for him to publicly violate somebody all the time.
Oh, yeah. I
Secretly.
didn't even think about that. It's one thing to be doing the sexual abuse at home.
Home in the shower,
which
hidden.
Is awful and horrendous. And, you know, the wife maybe choosing to remain ignorant or something. But, yeah, to be out in public, maybe that's what it is that it feels extra
He's
disgusting.
Getting a thrill from it.
Yeah, is that he, and for a child, you know, that's part, for me, that's part of why I don't go on big rides sometimes, is because I'm scared of throwing up. It's like, it has like an inherent embarrassment to it, you know, especially for a kid.
Yeah, he's humiliating him and getting a thrill off of it.
Yep.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
He really targets him in every way possible.
Yeah.
Fred Coe also took the stand on his own behalf, and his lies weren't exactly the best. For example, he denied ever owning items like gloves, beanies, and oven mitts.
Well, then he couldn't have done it.
He also claimed he was away in Seattle during the time of the first 6 South Hill rapes, an account backed up only by his parents and some questionable, at best, phone records. Coe's girlfriend Virginia Parham, also known as Jeannie, testified that on the morning of Friday, March 6, 1981, 4 days before Fred's arrest, she had woken up early to find him washing a pair of stained oven mitts. She also testified that Fred owned a dildo, quote, close to 2 feet high, unquote. Quote, she also said there was a moment in December 1980 when she feared Coe was the South Hill Rapist. She'd just read a newspaper description of an unsuccessful rape. It just came together. Maybe he was out there raping women, unquote. Virginia had met Fred while working in a laundromat in December of 1978 and began dating in May the next year. While they lived together, Jeannie said Fred would often enter a room with his huge dildo positioned by his crotch. She was also familiar with many items of clothing detailed to her by police from witness and victim statements. Items like Fred's gray jogging clothes, red jacket, and oven mitts. One morning, she had woken up early and discovered Fred washing the oven mitts, with no explanation as to why. Virginia also described a pair of black gloves Fred owned, quote, noting that they eventually became more deteriorated and actually had one of the fingers hanging off. Not too long before he was arrested, he almost always wore black leather gloves, even during the summertime.
I just can't imagine being in the same home with someone that I might have that concern with.
Right.
There was like a huge imbalance in their relationship, and she desperately wanted to be with him, and he was a very charming, psychopath.
And she probably talked herself out of a lot of these suspicions.
Yeah, he didn't do it.
Everybody has that. That's a popular jogging outfit.
Yeah, I can't
He's
say
weird. He wears the gloves all the time anyway.
I can't say anything because he'll be mad about it. And look at how he treated a child. I can only imagine that there were levels of abuse within that relationship. I don't know if there's any proof of documentation of that, but to some degree, I'm sure, whether it was verbal or just controlling or whatever he was doing.
Definitely verbally and like psychologically. Yeah, he would kind of like just badger her about things until she would give in.
In the back of her mind, though, she had to have known. That is too much coincidence, I think.
Well, and probably part of the verbal abuse would be making her feel stupid or questioning.
For even asking,
Yeah, because then it's like, well, how can I trust my instinct? I'm such an idiot.
Because she's so used to being gaslit. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. And I imagine, again, the suspicion alone you could talk yourself out of, I think.
Yeah. Well, and there's the embarrassment, too, that shouldn't exist, but that people kind of put on themselves of, how did I not see it? How did I end up in a relationship with a monster, which you didn't do anything. You're just there. You can't help what this person is hiding and lying about.
Yeah. But man, that scares me. Just the thought of somebody having some sort of secret like that.
Type A blood was found at several rape scenes. Other bodily fluids collected as evidence were tested and came back with a present secretor status. A secretor is a person in the ABO blood group whose blood antigens are present in other bodily fluids like semen, urine, breast milk, tears, and saliva. Blood antigens are, quote, any substance to which the immune system can respond, unquote. Fred Coe was a secretor, as are 80% of people. All he had to do was be a non-secretor, and he couldn't even do that correctly. Quote, the laboratory found human semen on both the underpants and jeans of the victim, which were typed and determined to be blood type A. The victim's blood type is O, and Mr. Coe has blood type A, unquote. In a pre-trial interview, Fred reported he'd had 2 head injuries in his younger life, resulting in as many concussions. The jury, unimpressed by his grandiose attorney role play, the shaky testimony from his parents, and his utter denial of facts, convicted Fred Coe on 4 counts of first-degree rape on July 29, 1981. Asked by a reporter if he had doubts regarding Coe's guilt, Lieutenant Gene McGogan, head of the Special Rape Squad who arrested Fred, cut the question off with, quote, oh, there's never been anything close, unquote. Assistant Prosecutor Steve Matthews called Frederick Coe, quote, a man who puts a face on things and is perfectly comfortable tearing off one face and putting another face on, even if they're mutually exclusive. Whatever suits his needs is what works for him, unquote. During the sentencing phase, Carl Maxey, a civil rights activist during the 1960s and 70s, as well as the first black man to graduate from Gonzaga Law School in 1951 and a former champion boxer, joined Fred Coe's defense team. Maxie ran in similar Spokane social circles and had known the Coes for years. Quote, "So Maxie arranged for Dr. Robert A. Wetzler, a well-known psychiatrist in the field of sexual psychopathy, to interview Coe one more time. This time, Coe told Wetzler that he had committed one of the rapes and would be willing to accept treatment for his sexual problems. Even then, Coe was coy about his admission. He told the psychiatrist he was jealous of the South Hill Rapist and had committed a copycat rape. Still, when Maxie put Wetzler on the stand during the sentencing hearing, Wetzler dropped the bombshell. Coe had confessed and was begging for treatment." Unquote. Just after midnight, on August 17, 1981, Judge Shields announced Fred Coe's sentencing live on TV, saying, quote, "I have worried, I have been very concerned, I have thought, I have read, I have researched, and I have prayed," unquote, before handing down Fred prison terms of 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, and life. Shields also denied a defense request to have Coe committed to a mental institution in lieu of prison. Fred Coe was instead sent to Washington State Penitentiary. Later that same day, Julie Twyford, one of the members of Coe's defense team, was arrested for drunk driving after putting her car into the Spokane River. There is a photo available on our blog of her arrest that shows you everything you need to know about dealing with the Coe family. Friend and dildo procurer Jay Williams paused in his reminiscences. Quote, "Funny thing, when Fred lived in California, he used to tell people he was from Spokane, and nobody knew where Spokane was. So he started saying he was from Seattle, and that didn't work much better. But he found that everyone seemed familiar with Walla Walla, maybe from all the old jokes. So he started telling people he was from there. Now he is." Unquote.
Why do you think that is? Because of the penitentiary?
Yeah. I guess.
That was like
well, I think it's sort of like
non-existent place for me.
It's like Kalamazoo or
Yeah.
Rancho
Yeah.
Cucamonga.
And I feel like there were jokes like almost limerick or something about
Take
Walla
the slow
Walla.
train to Walla Walla.
Yeah.
Or something. Rich Jennings, a plainclothes policeman who had worked as part of the special rape squad, was brought back into the orbit of the Coes in November of 1981. He was teamed up with Lieutenant Lynn Howerton, the head of ADVIN, Administrative Vice, Intelligence, and Narcotics, a unit answerable only to a deputy chief. On November 2nd, 1981, the Spokane County Prosecutor's Office received an anonymous phone call regarding efforts Ruth Coe, Fred's mother, had made to acquire a hitman from Spokane's criminal underworld. The anonymous tip was corroborated by a massage parlor operator named Violet Cooper, who reported that during a visit, when she made a quip about needing mafia money to pay her bills, Ruth Coe asked if she really knew anyone in the mob, as she was in the market for a hitman. Jennings and Howerton met Violet at her home on November 16, 1981, and after speaking with her, she agreed to make a phone call to the Coe house. Listening in, the policeman heard Violet ask, quote, "Are you still in the market for doing harm to someone?" Unquote. Ruth Coe's response, quote, yes, definitely, unquote. Violet asked who she wanted killed, and Ruth mentioned her son's prosecuting attorney, Donald Brockett, and the case's judge, George Shields. 3 days later, Officer Jennings dialed the Coe residence and spoke to Ruth, saying he was Terry the hitman. They set a meeting for 4:30 p.m. at a shopping center. Ruth arrived at the appointed time and approached Terry, who was sitting in his undercover vehicle. The conversation was being recorded, and the microphone picked up Ruth's voice when she leaned into the open window. "Officer, just tell me what you want." Ruth Coe. "Well, and that judge, I'd like him gone. Dead. And I'd like both of them dead, really. Except that with that Brockett, I felt that he's a man about 46 or 47, and he has been so filthy, and my feeling for him is that I would love to see him just an addlepated vegetable that had to be cared for, that his family had to take care of for the rest of his life. I mean diapers and all the rest of it. He wanted 42 years of my son's life gone. I'd like to see him sit 42 years in, as a baby, I suppose. How you clobber them. That could be the way it'd come out. So dead is great, but I do think he should suffer. Even if I paid for this in any way, if they caught me in any way, I would, know it was worth it." Unquote. The next afternoon, Ruth found out just how much it was worth when she was arrested after handing Jennings a down payment of $500 in cash, with the remainder of the money said to be coming from, quote, "a piece of jewelry that was my mother's, that I dearly loved, and had all my life since she's gone," unquote. Before the arrest, she said to Rich Jennings, quote, "We've lived a normal life, and they crucified us. My son is no rapist. He's a very attractive man, as you are. He has to run the other way to keep from being raped himself, as I know you probably do," unquote. In the jail's booking area, a friendly clerk recognized Ruth and asked her what she was there for. Lieutenant Lynn Howerton, Ruth's escort to the lockup, said it was up to her, and Ruth responded, "for trying to kill the judge and prosecutor." Gordon Coe, whom Ruth said on tape knew about the hit and provided the cash for the first payment, called it, quote, "a clear case of entrapment. They could have just informed me that she had gotten this idea in her head, and we could have seen that she got help," unquote. January 8th, 1982, Ruth Coe, wearing a jet black wig, pleaded innocent to 2 charges of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Attorney Carl Maxey was backseat for Ruth Coe's trial, a non-jury one, meaning the judgment would be judged only by the judge, who in this case was Judge Robert Bibb. Maxey's defense was that Ruth was cuckoo bananas. He had sent a psychologist to interview Ruth in jail, who later called her a sick woman to the press. Fred Coe, under stress from Mother Bear's arrest and forthcoming trial, compounded by harassment from fellow inmates who did not take kindly to his kind of criminal, was put on suicide watch. It was said Fred and Ruth Coe had more of a boyfriend-girlfriend rather than a mother-son relationship. They had frequent, explosive arguments, and Ruth seemed to have complete control of Fred. They were obsessed with each other, and he was compelled to bend to her every whim, which stoked an ever-expanding ember of rage inside him. Ruth, or Mamie Ruth Enfield Coe, as she was born on June 30th, 1920, was a nearly lifelong resident of Spokane. Her father ran a dry goods store, and her mother was a housewife. Ruth, also described as, quote, eccentric, married newspaper reporter Gordon Coe in 1945. A person of refined taste, she spent a fortune on clothes. A woman whose child had gone to school with Fred Coe said, quote, "she'd wear heels and stockings to a potato race," unquote. Ruth, who had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, of which she was not managing, once lashed out during a road trip, raking her fingers across the cheek of Fred's then-wife Jennifer, which left a noticeable scar. Also fond of nicknames, she called Fred Freddie Coe, Ricky, Coco, and Son. She was a former model and charm school teacher who spoke in a fake, faltering Southern accent, and who only came alive socially when speaking about her children. The most notable thing about Ruth Coe is that she was petite in stature, with dark hair and light eyes, quite similar to many of the South Hill Rapist victims. When the trial's special prosecutor, Mary K. Barbieri's opening statement included that Ruth Coe wanted someone made into a vegetable, a young clerk stopped writing notes and stared at Mrs. Coe. Barbieri went on to list Ruth's only motivations as hatred and revenge. On the witness stand, policeman Rich Jennings called her demeanor, quote, calm, very businesslike, very bitter, very revengeful, unquote, during the murder solicitation. Spokane's NBC affiliate, KHQ6, obtained police recordings of Ruth Coe's solicitation attempt, and though they were ordered by the judge not to play the tapes on air, played they were indeed. Afterwards, Ruth Coe had to be hospitalized, pausing the trial for several days. Barbieri's closing statement summed it up in a nice little package. Quote, determination is what you hear on those tapes. Her intention is stated over and over again. She intended that they be killed, and it was a mere accident that they hadn't been. It is a stark reality in this society that murder for hire happens. At her sentencing on Friday, May 28, 1982, Ruth, quote, seemed to sag into her seat, as though the force of gravity were stronger here than back home, unquote. She was found guilty as charged and received an absolutely infuriating sentence. 20 years in prison, suspended, followed by 1 year in whichever county jail she liked the most, then 10 years of probation.
I'm sorry, whatever she liked the most, she got to choose?
Yep.
Also, what does that mean? Suspended, like
you don't
someday
do it.
We'll give you 20 years?
No, it's on your record, but you don't ever serve it.
And you would think a judge of all people would be like, you can't hire people to kill judges. You're getting 20 years or whatever.
You think you'd want to set an example, right? Like, you can't do that. It's very odd.
I think the attorney, her defense attorney, Maxie, was able to paint her as a very damaged woman who was frail and not on medication.
Well, she needed to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot.
Which she was unwell, but you also know the difference between right and wrong. So.
And I think it really also helped, of course, that she was a prominent person of Spokane.
Which, for them being so powerful and he's the editor and he's hiding the story and all of this stuff, but they didn't have the money to bail him out?
Yeah, the first time.
Like, what's that?
It's interesting.
Anyway.
I guess prominent doesn't always mean rich.
She began serving her time at the Pend-Oriole County Jail on the Washington-Idaho border before spending most of the year-long sentence on work release. Attorney Carl Maxey was credited with the unbelievably light sentencing. Ruth Coe died on March 16, 1996. She had moved to the Las Vegas suburb of Henderson, Nevada, after her release from jail, dragging Gordon along with her. Her cause of death was emphysema and other illnesses. Interviewed for an article on Ruth Coe's death, George Shields said, quote, "These are the kind of things you just as soon seen fade away," unquote. Jack Olson, author of the book Son, A Psychopath and His Victims, which I read to research the case, called Ruth a, quote, "theatrical, homicidal woman who never received the help she needed. The very definition of a mixed-up human being," unquote. June 7, 1984, the Washington State Supreme Court overturned Fred's convictions, all 4 of them. The reason was the use of hypnosis during the investigation, the aim of which was to help both victims and witnesses develop a fuller memory of their events. Police also spoke with John Cockburn, Fred's former brother-in-law. Before the first trial, the Coes asked him to testify about the whole breakfast every morning, dinner every night crap the family had concocted. He told them he refused because it was a lie. In December of '84, Jay Williams was interviewed by police, admitting Fred had asked him to retrieve and dispose of the dildo and sweater, and that he, quote, was able to access the dildo and destroy it, unquote. Victims had to testify again at a new trial, which took place in Seattle beginning January 7th, 1985. On February 12th, Fred was again convicted for 3 of the same 4 rape counts. He received life plus 55 years. Julie Harmia, who had emblazoned Coe's face into her memory, testified again during his retrial. She was the only woman of the 6 Coe was charged with raping that had not undergone hypnosis to assist with her statements and recollections. Before the new trial began, Fred Coe was tested using the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, quote, "the most widely used and researched clinical assessment tool used by mental health professionals to help diagnose mental health disorders," unquote. During this portion of the evaluation, Fred Coe denied guilt for all of the charged rape counts. Dr. Ronald Page, who conducted the test, further described the South Hill rapes and attacks as, quote, "unnecessarily sadistic and undeniably predatory. Mr. Coe appears to have been a sexual predator of seeming consuming preoccupation with his outlet. His actions appear to have been premeditated, aggressive, sadistic, degrading, and possibly repeated in a serial fashion," unquote. Fred Coe was diagnosed as a sexual sadist with borderline personality disorder. On October 1st, 1986, Sean O'Brien, 24, a secretary from Kennewick, Washington, became Fred Coe's second wife. The couple briefly exchanged vows, with Sean's sister Connie serving as bridesmaid and an unidentified inmate as their witness. The newly minted Mrs. Coe initially began writing to Fred after reading the book Son.
My God.
I know.
How could you read that book?
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
And want to be with someone like that? Well,
that's upsetting.
We know that's a psychological issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that. I feel like that should be looked at sometimes because people getting married, you know, it could be
and they have to approve those weddings.
Yeah, and what is that called? The spousal privilege? And it's like, if we have someone that's really mentally unwell on the outside who is now connected to this person on the inside, that could create a dangerous situation.
After they were wed, Fred pushed his new wife to take out credit card after credit card with ever-increasing limits. Eventually, she was sending Fred cash advances off of credit. Yikes.
I'm sorry.
They divorced in 1988.
That is very common. I actually have a friend growing up that happened to her mother. She married an inmate. He sent his son to live with them. The son robbed them. She was in crazy debt, filling his accounts.
Gosh.
I mean, it's horrible. They prey on single women, usually parents, single parents. I mean, it is horrific.
I've watched Love After Lockup. I've seen how the romance blossoms. But yeah, I've seen documentaries and stuff where it's like, that's, for some people, that's like their job, is that they post photos and they start relationships and then it's just equal across the board and they get money.
Why is it allowed?
Right?
Why is it I get you're in prison. That doesn't mean you're cast off out of the world. But
there should be some limits to where you can't keep harming people.
Exactly. That motherfucker. I really hate this guy.
Yeah.
Quote, however, the hypnosis issue still tainted the case, and on January 29th, 1988, the Washington State Supreme Court reversed 2 of the convictions again. The 3rd conviction was upheld. It carried a 25-year sentence. Theoretically, Coe could have been released in 4 years. But it didn't turn out that way, at least in part because Coe refused to attend any of his parole hearings.
What?
Unquote.
What a moron. For someone who thinks he's so smart concocting these stories, what the hell was he thinking?
Yeah, his line was, I didn't do any of it, so I never have to do any treatment for it. Just utter denial was his method.
Which is the first thing I would think you did it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Even somebody who was not guilty and is doing time would do anything they could to get out.
Yeah. Anytime I can talk to someone, anytime I can get in front of someone.
In 1994, Fred, now 47, was attacked while at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. His throat slashed by an inmate with a self-made knife, as Fred spoke on the phone. I guess life's pretty rough when you're a pervert in the clink. Am I right? Am I?
You quoting me?
Yeah.
I love it.
Fred, unfortunately, survived his injuries.
Oh. Sorry.
No.
How do you really feel?
During the summer of 2006, Fred Coe sat for an interview with Dateline NBC, in which he defined his mental health as, quote, perfect. At that point, he had never attended a session with a prison counselor. He said that upon his release, he planned to move to France and live with his sister.
So his time that he had to do, you said 25 or
20? 25. So yeah, by the time, 2006.
Okay, so was that a 25 sentence or was that a life sentence or?
At the very end, it was just one conviction was upheld, and that was 25 years.
If he made it 25 years, I would feel really annoyed having to let him out knowing he didn't go to his sessions or try to improve at all.
Well,
if I were in prison and I didn't do it, I would still take the opportunity to improve myself. You know, use that counseling, get a degree. What the fuck?
I think it just speaks to his arrogance and narcissism of, I'm perfect. I didn't do anything. Mommy loves me.
Ugh, gross.
And I think as well that he wanted to reoffend.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, you think he would have taken the opportunity to get out in 4 years so he could go do that. He's walking contradiction, this guy.
Yeah, like that one guy said, and he'll put on any face and rip off another.
Yep.
Fred's prison term officially ended in 2006. The question then was what to do with a man like Coe, who denied all culpability in the South Hill rapes and attacks and was nearly certain to reoffend. Fortunately, Washington enacted the Community Protection Act in 1990 and the Sexually Violent Predator Act in 1996, designed to, quote, keep the most dangerous sexually violent predators segregated from society even after their criminal sentences ended. That same year, 2006, an evaluation of Fred Coe was completed according to the Sexually Violent Predator Act by the Washington State End of Sentence Review Committee. Quote, sex offenders who have completed their criminal sentences, but whom state superior courts to find meet the definition of sexually violent predator, may be civilly committed to the Special Commitment Center for care, control, and custody. They remain in the total confinement program, receiving ongoing mental treatment until the court determines that they are ready for placement in a community-supervised living arrangement known as less restrictive alternative. Fred Coe declined to be interviewed for the purpose of this evaluation. Unquote.
Shocking.
Coe's civil commitment trial began on September 15, 2008, and they went all the way back, beginning with the first offense of Coe's that was on record. It was a night in May 1966. Fred, who was 19 at the time, met a 16-year-old at a dance and later agreed to give her a ride home. He drove into a wooded area, climbed on top of her, and shook her while pinning her down. When he dropped her off in downtown Spokane, the girl wrote down the man's license plate number, through which they identified Fred, but the charges were never pursued. Julie Harmia also testified at the 2008 trial, dragging out those old, painful memories to make sure Coe's cage stayed locked. Sunshine Shelley Monahan testified as well, stating that, quote, Coe once called her from prison and threatened to kill her when he got out, unquote. And, quote, in response to questions by Assistant Attorney General Todd Bowers, Monahan looked directly at the jury and said she was beaten in the face, strangled, and violently raped, unquote. Virginia Parham, Coe's girlfriend during the South Hill rapes, was called to testify, but she never responded to subpoenas and had already left the state. Psychiatrist Robert A. Wetzler testified that in 1981, Coe told him he harbored jealousy toward the South Hill Rapist and copied his methods during the one rape he admitted to. This was the rape on February 9th, 1981, the one where a young mother was attacked after dropping her baby off with her folks in the early morning, one of the attacks during which the rapist wore oven mitts. Coe also admitted an attempted rape to Dr. Wetzler, the one from December of 1980, when the woman he attacked bit him and maced him in the face. Not at all surprisingly, Coe was declared by the jury to be a, quote, sexually violent predator, a designation that gives the government the power to hold him indefinitely at the Special Commitment Center on McNeil Island, unquote. A major factor in this determination was testimony heard by the jury regarding a sexual conduct violation Fred committed on June 6, 2008, 3 months before the trial began. A female rehabilitation counselor discovered Coe masturbating in his room when she was doing room checks. When the cone of her flashlight revealed Coe, quote, stroking himself, he made no attempt to cover himself or turn away. Quote, he just looked at me with no expression on his face, unquote. Shelley Monahan was in court to hear the verdict. Speaking outside the courtroom, Shelley, her voice tinged with relief, said, quote, after 29 years, it's finally over. Today, justice has been served, and our community is going to be a lot safer because of it, unquote. In December 2013, Fred Coe, again acting as his own attorney, filed a lawsuit in which, quote, he contends he doesn't belong at the Special Commitment Center, unquote. And in September of 2014, a federal judge in Tacoma, Washington, upheld Coe's conviction, rejecting Fred's claims that he had ineffective counsel during his 2008 trial. A June 1, 1986 newspaper article announced that Spokane's best-known and beloved TV newscaster was moving her weather reporting skills on Spokane's CBS affiliate, KREM, to an NBC affiliate in Sacramento, California. This was also after her fiancé, Kim Mom, a mountain climber, died in an avalanche earlier that year. Sunshine Shelley Monahan, a radio DJ at the time of her attack, had transitioned to TV news, and after working in Seattle and Chicago, made a triumphant return to Spokane TV News when she joined the team at KHQ, which is the same station that broadcast recordings of Ruth Coe soliciting a hitman. Shelley, who began her career at age 17, retired in 2014. Quote, "The person you see on air is the person you see when the camera is not on. It's not an act. She has the Spokane community in her DNA." Unquote. Shelley said she planned to become a realtor, and probably a great one. She said, quote, "Every day, somebody calls me Sunshine Shelley." Unquote. 40 years after the South Hill rapes and attacks ceased, Gonzaga University Law School hosted a symposium regarding the South Hill Rapist. During the panel discussion, one of Fred Coe's defense attorneys, Julie Twyford, called it, quote, "the case of the century in Spokane," unquote, and said Coe would have been out of prison decades earlier if he hadn't taken his parents' advice to admit to one of the rapes in an attempt to secure hospitalization over serving his time in prison. The symposium included a moment of silence for the South Hill Rapist victims and an impact statement written by a victim of Coe's who was 15 at the time she was raped. Fred Coe legally changed his name to Kevin Coe in 1982, perhaps as a way to mask his identity, or maybe, like everyone else in his life, he had decided to give himself a nickname. Kevin Coe, always keeping distant, even from himself, will forever be remembered as the South Hill Rapist. On an excellent episode of Shattered on Investigation Discovery, Jay Williams, Fred's longtime friend and the Danny Ocean of dildo thieving, was interviewed. Quote, "I don't know why I see him in my dreams. They're not nightmares. They're just, he's there. Maybe I think it would have been better if he had died. It's kind of sad what we had, and then what it became." Julie Harmia, on Fred Coe's 2008 retrial conviction, which was aided greatly by her testimony, said with a sense of pride, quote, "Finally, this little piece of the devil is put away. I kept this son of a gun behind bars. I'm hoping I brought them, the women who could not testify, some peace and some comfort and some feeling of safety." Unquote. RAIN is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. RAIN created and operates the National Sexual Assault Hotline in partnership with more than 1,000 local sexual assault service providers across the country. Help is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and can be reached at 800-656-HOPE. That's 800-656-4673 or at rainn.org.
Is this guy still alive then?
Yes.
But he's
you written
in
him a letter?
No. I feel like you guys get a better response than me for
that's
sure.
True.
Yeah. Just send him. Yeah. Just don't do that.
I don't think so. This guy is a monster.
Yeah,
there's nothing
he's
to be said.
completely unrepentant. One of the links I have in the show notes is a letter he wrote about his railroading, and it's bonkers. But you can see his perspective fully. That's about as much as I want from him. But yeah, that's on our blog that we have.
That Josh has never looked at.
Never looked at it.
Hearing the choices that his mother made, it's not surprising that he had, given their relationship, that I'm sure he had instilled in him, you are mommy's little perfect angel and you can do no wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who says otherwise is just jealous or, coming after you because of who you are or something.
Not to take away what he created of himself on his own.
Right.
She definitely supported this on a pedestal type of man who can do whatever he wants.
Well, and then them being, community members, it's not even so much whether or not you did that or if you need help or to be in prison, but, protect the family name. And, of course, our son didn't do that.
I wonder how many red flags of his childhood were swept under the rug. Like, what was happening before he was, 19 when we see that on his record? Because it didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't think you just decide to take a teenager out in the woods and then eventually become a rapist and a child sexual predator and
I'm amazed
abuser.
He didn't kill anyone.
Really, yeah. Even accidentally, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Josh, are you worried at some point there's a risk that he would be let out, or that?
No, and it sucks. It's one of those things I believe that they every year
It's up for vote.
They have to bring evidence and prove it again, and I
which
think it could be the
scares
same
me.
stuff. Oh, it's very scary. Yeah.
What if there's some change in, I want to say management, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that is scary because he is an example of someone who should not be in public.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think he has any control because he's shown that without proper education and treatment. Like, how could he have improved just by being locked up,
I think that's a valid fear. Actually, that you saying that made me think of Catching Cletus and how they got the new warden in. He's like, nope, we're going to do it this nice way, and we're going to work with these people. And, what if someone like that, comes into the picture and is like, no, everyone deserves a chance, and then he's out. And it's also scary because he was so young going in. It's not like he's 90 if he got out now. He'd be, 60? Almost 60? So, it's not like that's unheard of.
Who's approving this, too? Is this the Washington Supreme Court?
I think he's 75 right now.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he is that much older to where hopefully if he was released, he wouldn't have the physical strength to do those
I
things.
don't know. His type of personality, whether or not he's doing something physical, he'd find a way to be abusive to somebody, you know?
That's true.
He did some scary things to that child. That poor kid.
Yeah, but so brave, and I think I might have edited it for length, but that boy who was 13 when they interviewed him aggressively wanted to pursue charges, aggressively, but the statute of limitations had passed.
Oh, fuck that!
But
that's not
how is
fair.
that even possible for child abuse?
I know. I don't think that should be allowed because kids don't even know what things are until they grow up and learn what they are. That is horrible. Oh, that makes me irate.
It seemed a lot of people were swayed by his charm or intimidation. And so to have this child who had been harmed by him so badly be able to be like, yeah, get this guy.
And while it may have helped secure his punishment, there's something about him not getting charged for that rubs me the wrong way in so many cases.
Yeah.
I don't think statute of limitations should be in place for murder and rape.
Yeah.
And child sex abuse. Like, that is just beyond me who would think that that's okay.
Yeah.
I want to see why.
So
I
basically,
see the proof of why.
He could admit to that. He could say, like, yeah, I did that to that kid, but it was in the 80s, so tough luck. Well, and you got to imagine, too, okay, you said you think that maybe there were, 30 victims on some level, about?
23, I think, confirmed.
Okay. So.
But as many, I mean, it's dozens. I really do think it's 80 or more.
And it's in a small town.
One neighborhood.
So imagine the odds of being in jail with someone related to someone that was attacked are probably pretty high.
That's a good point. That would be scary.
That ripple effect of cousins and neighbors and whoever in your family, your sister, and you learn that that's the guy and he just ends up in your prison. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine the odds would be that someone there knew or that they had a connection to him.
I also really hate the idea of him being allowed to be in the special confinement program on McNeil Island when he's not. I mean, he is. I didn't say this. He's not participating in anything still.
Right.
So he's just being housed there.
That should be a requirement to get these special things.
Yeah. So why just send him back to jail then?
Yeah, I guess so.
But they won't.
It's,
I mean, they need some sort of
law.
law.
The sentencing is done and. Oh, but it's so frustrating.
I mean, we're honestly lucky that that's in place that keeps him
there.
there.
Thank goodness that's there. Otherwise, their hands would have been tied. And they would have said, he served his time. Now we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on him for when the next thing happens and maybe put him away for longer.
It just reminds me, and I know I've said this in previous cases, how much I disagree with statute of limitation laws. I understand it's basically trying to discourage false memories or whatever, unreliable witnesses, but I feel like the cases that we hear about, they're not unreliable. And yes, he was a kid, but you remember that shit. I remember things from when I was 1 year old because they were impactful.
Right. And if you're a good enough detective, prosecutor, everyone that's involved, it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, I know it's hard because it's hard to go back 40 years and find documentation and witnesses.
Yeah, they want things like
schedules
DNA
and things like that, but
recordings and things.
But I mean, at this point, though, if you look back 30 years, that's the 90s. I mean, we're almost caught up to technology to where like everything for where everything for everyone that's alive will be digital, and so it's like we're not that far away from that happening. Yeah, why can't we extend that, especially for rape?
It should be reviewed. Children in particular.
Yes.
Josh, did he pursue like in a different kind of court case, like sue him for what he did to him?
No, I don't think there was ever anything like that. No.
God, I want to like.
I mean,
go
imagine
to court
like
for him.
Suing him civilly would get you nothing, right?
I mean, just to have some sort of guilty verdict is
Yeah.
enough for me. Like, even if it's a $10 gift card, just to feel like he did this. God, I'm so fixated on it.
$10 gift card.
I'm sorry. I'm just
all right.
What a fuck.
Yeah.
There actually are. I mean, the good news is there are some groups that are working to change statute of limitations.
Yeah, it just depends on the state.
Yeah.
Because, the states that aren't going to pass that.
Right.
They exist. Washington's pretty good about that stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of people hate that they abolished the death penalty, but I feel like they're really logical about those kind of decisions. So hopefully we won't have a problem with this going away anytime soon.
Well, and the other problem, it's not just the fact that you're letting these people go and, okay, we're worried about memories and documentation. If you have to look at the people who don't want it to happen, for example, like I was just looking up this article, 2 of the biggest groups for New York, because New York has a really small short statute of limitations for child abuse. The 2 biggest groups against it are the Boy Scouts of America.
Of course they are.
And the Catholic Church.
And that's not a surprise.
You really have to peel back the layers to be like, well, there must be a reason that we have these statutes and, it's legal and it's, it's above our head and, there's good reason there. And it's like, no. Let's look at why it's not happening. Let's fully understand. Oh, because these people don't want to get in more trouble for more child abuse.
Because it's a long, deep tunnel of abuse in those organizations.
So it's like, let's get rid of them flat out. The end.
It's just very unfair and infuriating.
Just like this entire case.
Yep. Thanks, Josh. Wet that whistle.
Oh, she said it.
She's on board. These whistles are wet.
Okay. Too much.
I'm sorry.
Too much wetting of the whistles.
I pluralized
you went too
it.
far.
I just thought of like a driblet of water on all your beard hair while you're drinking.
Hey, are you trying to get us horny or something?
And in heaven, God was like, did someone pray about a dildo?
Yeah, I don't think that that's at the top of his priority list.
Or hers.
That's true.
Or theirs. And that's progress. Someone typing over there?
Yeah, I'm done. Sorry.
I
was erasing while you were breaking. You
All
right.
And I erased 2 spaces.
Yeah, if someone was to ask like what word you would use, I would say long. It was 2 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's almost like it was sitting there menacing or
one
something.
One of those monster ones, I'm guessing, that you see
Yeah.
at the... Not that I've seen at the store.
I've never seen it in those little cabinets, nor purchased.
I like how M instantly was like, no, those things stand up. You can suction to the shower wall. You can put them anywhere you want. Don't put them on a mirror. But a hardwood floor is great.
Hardwood floor. It was funny, though. I walked him out this morning, and he did a legitimate fart spree of diarrhea.
Yay!
I'm like, what is happening? It's my own fault. I gave him a slice of turkey on Friday, and I am paying the price. No people food.
Oh, my God. That's funny. Is he okay? Like,
he's
Chloe
fine.
Just have to take him out every 2 minutes?
No, he's all right. He can hold it. It's just
that's
like
so funny. It's just soft.
He's getting back to normal. Yeah, he's soft serve now.
I can't imagine that dog having diarrhea. I feel like it would like shoot him across the room.
No, it wasn't big. It was just a little, but it was like an audible. It's definitely like a soft serve, a melted soft serve.
Hot peanut butter.
Yeah. It's nasty.
Maxie ran in similar Spokane social Circles.
I'll show social circles.
Spokane social circles.
Spokane South Spokane social circles.
South of Seattle, Spokane social circles.
South Hill Spokane social circles. Secret society.
There's a photo available on our blog. I've never said that in my life. It'd be great if I could be dead right now.
All right, back to your story.
Sure. Oh, my foam palace. Tumbled down. No, I've always been interested in Dungeons and Dragons.
It's
I
not as
decided
hard
to
as I
stay
thought
away
it would
from
be.
it for obvious reasons. I had a lot of things going against me. I didn't need Dungeons and Dragons against me.
I see what you mean.
They probably could put you in one of those, like, what are those? The
little wardrobe
Ziplocs-
bags?
Yeah, this vacuum packs.
You'd think, but they are not very good. I've bought some and I've tried to put not people, but things in it, and they break.
Scod. That's a ska squad. That's stupid.
They wear plaid pants and have a lot of jingly wallets.
A lot of horns.
Little mini horns, many boss tones that are mighty.
Give me a straw and I'll show you how I make armpit farts.
I've seen it. Seen it many times. Many
I
hotel
haven't done
rooms.
it all year. I think I need to do it.
All right, we've got straws.
I'm sorry, I was not listening to what you guys were saying.
That's
I'm so
okay.
sorry. I was writing
You just have
something.
to break for us to talk every once
We
in a
were
while.
just ranting about these people.
It was Fatisfactory.
Right. You say fattest factory?
Yes, I did.
You son of a bitch! You got me. You insulted me. You made a mistake and you insulted me.
She's multi-talented. She's an influencer.
Gross.
Murder in the Rain is a Cascade Media production, written and hosted by Emily Rowney, Alicia Holland, and Josh McCullough, edited by Josh McCullough. You can always contact us at murderintherain@gmail.com or through our website, murderintherain.com. If you just can't get enough of Murder in the Rain, for as little as $5 a month, you'll have exclusive access to bonus episodes at patreon.com. You can find us on all of the socials, and for more true crime, follow @M_Murder in the Rain on TikTok, and you can also listen to Alicia and Josh on their other show, Always Be My Sisters. And suck my balls.